just love the concept that this interaction may cause them to smile more, or more likely to smile, at the next people they encounter, or maybe at their families or friends later that day, or whatever. It's an expanding, exponential improvement of mood. Are you ready to live your best life, make healthy choices, have success, have fun, and still have time for everything else? I'm here to teach you how to do that, and we'll all learn together from guests along the way as well. Follow along for some powerful tips on cultivating gratitude, making healthy choices for mind and body, and having fun doing it. What if all the angst and worry actually don't help? Oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do this differently. OMG, my friends, welcome to this episode. We're talking about something that is really important today, just in life and in all the experiences we're going to have. And let me start the story this way. One of the first things I watched when I decided that maybe all this mindset stuff wasn't just a bunch of hooey was the movie The Secret. And you may or may not have heard of it. It's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. In that movie, I first saw Bob Proctor. Around the same time, I connected with Karen Mullins, who you heard on a previous episode, via social media, and decided to work with her learning Bob Proctor's Thinking into Results program. Whole new world. Hello. I tell you this because today we're talking about how to have amazing interactions with people, whether you're selling, buying, posting, influencing, befriending, negotiating, working with them, whatever. Ready? Let's do this. All of those interactions, that whole big list I gave you, are about how we make people feel. In a world where technology and automation and, oh my gosh, AI, artificial intelligence, is the big thing right now, right? In a world where that all often dominates how we interact with people, it's really important to remember that human connection is still the key. So we're going to talk about alignment, empathy, building trust, and creating satisfaction. So stick with me. I think you're going to really like this. The overarching idea today and every day is leaving everyone you come in contact with an impression of increase. Now, let me pause here and say that I don't mean just rolling over and letting them have whatever they want. It is totally true that people who get what they want from us probably leave the interaction feeling better than they came, right? But that's not what we're talking about. I want you and me to speak up, to sell or negotiate what we care about, and to do it in a way that creates a great experience for the other person. That is absolutely possible. We're not also talking about being nice. I'm doing air quotes. I don't even really know how to define being nice. And I was just listening to a recent episode of the Barb Knows Best podcast about setting intentions. And they talked about this very thing. Subjugating our goals and needs to someone else's, being the quiet, nice one who never speaks up or rocks the boat, can lead down a path to some major issues. She mentioned on that episode that her eating disorder may have been partly caused by her just being overly nice and letting other people run over her. And to be frank, I kind of wonder if that's part of what I dealt with as well. I don't want to digress too far, but you can listen to my 2 types of food episode for more on my story with that. The key is we're talking about going for what you want and doing it in a way that is empowering for you and leaves people feeling good and leaves a lasting impact. This is powerful stuff. So you may have heard me say that I have, besides this podcast, a business in wellness and skincare that involves selling products. I started this business a little over 10 years ago, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. And I feel like that's common in life and probably healthy. We start something and we need to learn as we go. Absolutely a good and common thing. What happened though is I realized that I had some major issues with selling. I felt like selling was maybe bad, like I was trying to take advantage of people. And maybe you felt this way in a buying and selling type of situation, or maybe you felt this way in a work discussion or negotiation. You're trying to do something that you intend to do, but you're also maybe in your mind thinking, is this bad? Am I a bad person? That's how I was dealing with this idea of selling. And I do think that's pretty common. It's pretty common because we have these stereotypes in our minds about salespeople that are just obnoxious and annoying, right? And if you remember, Karen Mullins and I talked about hidden resistance in our minds that holds us back a few episodes ago. And so this was some of mine. I had to start really studying selling and influencing to see what it really meant and to see, should I be okay with it? Am I okay with it? And what I found is that selling is about serving. It's about providing solutions and providing value. Now, I also, you may or may not know, have a corporate job in which I provide training. And of course, in any corporate job, we have interactions with people throughout the day, right? I think, and I guess we'd have to ask some people that I work with to really know, but that's fine. I think that I'm recognized as fairly easy to work with in my job environment, and I get along with people well. And I have built that on purpose. So let's talk about how. Wallace Wattles talks about the impression of increase in his book, The Science of Getting Rich. And by the way, I will put that in our book list. You'll be able to see it in the show notes or in my Instagram link in bio. So here's some of what he says, and I'm quoting this. The desire for increase is inherent in all nature. It is the fundamental impulse of the universe. All human activities are based on the desire for increase. People are seeking more food, more clothes, better shelter, more luxury, more beauty, more knowledge, more pleasure, more life. Every living thing is under that necessity for continuous advancement. Where increase of life ceases, dissolution and death set in at once. People instinctively know this, and hence they are forever seeking more. And please note, just for a second, that's the end of the quote from the book, but please note, we're not always talking about money here. We're also talking about satisfaction, growth, joy. He also points out that there is nothing wrong with wanting more, with wanting increase, as long as it's not at the expense of others or causing harm to others. So how can we do this in our interactions with people, whether we're talking about business or we're talking about personal? In a selling or influencing or negotiating transaction, here's what you can do to leave the other person or people with an impression of increase. Leave them better off. You can ask questions and listen to the answers. You can smile as much as possible. You can use people's names. You can acknowledge their effort. You can give genuine compliments, and you can make sure that you are really aligned with your product or service or position. That's a really powerful list. So let's talk about it. What about a personal interaction? Well, you can do all of those things as well, right? This is not limited to business. The goal is to leave an interaction with someone and have them feeling better than before it began. Are we perfect? Can we always do this? Of course we can't. We're human beings, but we can always try and we can always get better. So let's break down some of the items that I put in that list. Asking questions and listening. I have always loved the idea that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You may have noticed I'm a talker. And so I needed to really learn how to ask questions and to make sure I was actually listening. One of the most common things that we do that we may not even realize is we ask a question and then really instead of listening to the person's answer, we're already thinking in our heads what we're going to say next. And sometimes that comes from being nervous or shy. I totally get it and I do it. And at the same time, that's not really listening. So we can all try to do better on that point for sure. We need to have some level of curiosity about the other person in our conversation or in our transaction. I would call this empathy empathy and interest. If you're selling something, you're hopefully trying to help them solve for a need or an issue that they have. If you are really doing that, you need to ask some questions about what their needs are, and you need to listen to the answers. In a one-on-one conversation, it's easy to see how you could do that. But how about in a social media setting or some type of large group setting? How do you know what people's needs are and what they're looking for a solution for? Well, you could do some asking around. You could do some polling. You could find out a bit, at least, about what your audience or colleagues or friends' needs are. Then you could give some thought to how you could help with those needs or what you could suggest. And you could suggest those things to the whole group. That's still listening to their answers and trying to provide value. So we want to use some empathy by putting ourselves in their shoes. And this is another saying that I have always appreciated because we all come from a different perspective and we all have a different life experience. Have you ever watched legal shows, or maybe you work in law enforcement or the legal profession or something related, and you've seen eyewitnesses? And eyewitnesses always seem to give just a slightly different story about what happened. And those stories are the reality to them. They are fully, well, I guess most of the time, trying to say what happened, what they saw, and at the same time, they're doing it from their perspective. And it might be their physical perspective. They were in a different place at a different angle, or it might be just their perspective from their life experience. It filters everything. That's a bunch of brain science that we're going to put aside for the moment. So we can't really see someone else and their needs well and clearly until we walk in their shoes and look from their perspective. That's part of empathy. And empathy, whether we're talking about sales or we're talking about just interpersonal relationships, is the secret ingredient that can turn a transaction into a really meaningful connection. Step into their shoes, try to understand their needs, try to understand what they want, what they don't want, right? Their pain points. Listen, actually pay attention, and that helps to build trust and it helps to build rapport. So all of those things matter and they add up. We're creating a connection on an emotional level as we do these things. It's about how we make people feel and how we strive to serve them. So remember, the very first episode of this podcast, we talked about an Albert Einstein quote that says that everything is energy. We communicate with people on a vibrational level. So it's body language, it's facial expressions, it's words we use, and it's also a lot more than that. Every molecule in our bodies, is vibrating all the time, always in movement, always in motion. This is quantum physics. And that creates a vibration that communicates out to people that we interact with. We live in an online social media world. For me, it's having a landing page for this podcast, having a cool link in bio for my business Instagram, and having a resources website for my social selling team. Just having a place to put information, links, recommendations, and even celebration. I was thrilled when I found Boss Lady Bio. You can create a website that looks gorgeous and you don't have to know how to code. Have a look at what they offer at omgteachme.onamission.bio. You can even try it for free. The energy vibrating from us, which is affected by our thoughts and emotions, is communicating itself to the other person in the conversation. So trying to connect with them on this more emotional level is powerful. Now, as I said, we all want a solution to our issues, right? We have issues, we need to solve them. If someone has that solution, we probably want it. If somebody could sell me a product or a service that would solve an issue that I have, I probably want it. Why would I not want it? It might be not the right time. It might be not the right price. Okay, that's fine. So I might not take action at that very moment, but I still want it. It solves my problem and I see that. So maybe eventually the timing will be right. The price will be right for me, whatever. Maybe I'll eventually do it. I still want it. So how do we show that we have a solution to someone's issues? We show our honest, true, authentic selves, and we care about people and make them feel good. Now, I don't mean blow smoke up their butts, right? right? I mean, truly do things that show other people that we value them and we want to serve them. So let's circle back to my list of ways that we can leave the impression of increase with someone. Another one was to be aligned with what we're selling, offering, arguing for, whatever the interaction is. And here's what I mean by that. People are going to see through us really quickly if we don't really believe in the product or service that we're offering, or we're trying to talk someone into something that we would not really want to do ourselves. There's energy communicating here, right? So people will feel a fake or just an off energy from us if we aren't fully on board, totally aligned with whatever we're selling or espousing or debating for. People can tell. One of the reasons, in fact, that I started my business in wellness years ago was that I had fallen in love with the products. I wanted everyone to know about them. I was thrilled with my results and my experience. That's alignment. Not that I knew that then, of course. I just knew that I liked something and I wanted to share it because that's what I do when I like something. Okay, back to the list. 2 more items on our impression of increase list are smiling and using people's names. Now, the smiling thing maybe seems obvious. Smile and pass it on as much as you can. I walk around in my neighborhood, which is not inside a city, but a little bit urban. So people often don't even look at each other when we're passing by on the sidewalk. And when I get the chance, I intentionally try to smile at people when we pass. Now, hopefully I don't go overboard and look creepy and weird. That's the goal. I just love the concept that this interaction may cause them to smile more, or more likely to smile, at the next people they encounter, or maybe at their families or friends later that day, or whatever. It's an expanding, exponential improvement of mood, especially because there is research out there saying that, get this, saying that moving our face muscles in the shape of a smile, whether faking it or not, improves our mood. That's real. So if right now, wherever you're listening to this, if you won't look like a nut, or maybe it doesn't matter, look like a nut, what the heck, smile to yourself right now. Right now. It matters. And then the second one I just mentioned was using people's names. Now, this is not necessarily a strength of mine, I must confess. And that being said, I recently learned a powerful lesson about this. So my sister and I were attending a 2-day conference out in Denver. And this conference was run by Kristen Boss. And if you're in social selling or online selling, direct sales, you will probably have heard her name. She offers really amazing programs and coaching. And so we were out there and attending this conference. Now, the conference, I'm not sure how many people were there. I'm going to say 400 or 500. She also has the Social Selling Academy, which you may have heard me talk about as well, that I am a member of and that I do advertise for because it's so powerful. And that has at least more than 1,000 people in it. Okay, so lots of people. That's relevant to my story. Now, there was a happy hour after one of the day's sessions so that we could meet and say hello to Kristen and maybe get a picture with her. It's a social media world, right? We all want a picture. And we went in smaller groups to this happy hour. So obviously not, 400 to 500 people at one time. So my sister and I are there and we see Kristen come in and we make our way over to her and she's saying hello to various people, all fine, all good. And when we walk up to her, she looks at me and says, Cheryl, right? And I am telling you, even now as I tell this story, it's almost hard to know how to respond. My jaw was on the floor. My sister's jaw was on the floor. We had not ever met in person before. About 1.5 years ago, I had been on a group coaching Zoom. So lots and lots of people, not just me. And Kristen had answered a question for me and helped coach me through a question I had for a few minutes as a small part of that Zoom 1.5 years ago. That is how she remembered my name. Now, we had name tags tags on. And if you've attended a conference before, you know how the name tags are often on a lanyard and they're sitting kind of down by her stomach. I would have noticed if she had looked at the name tags. That was not it. She truly remembered my name. And especially as someone who has not always been great at doing this, it's hard for me to even describe how powerful that was for me. I felt valued. And boy, did I leave that interaction with an impression of increase. Oh my goodness. I already know that she believes that she is offering something valuable with all of the services that she offers. I get to decide in any transaction situation if whatever's being offered is valuable for me, right? You get to decide. Whoever the customer is gets to decide, is this valuable for me? But am I going to lean towards yes because I have seen how much she cares? Yes, absolutely. Smiling and using people's names is evidence of caring. I will never forget that interaction. We probably, in fact, need a podcast episode on how to remember names more easily because I know this is a topic that I need help with, and maybe you do too. So I will add that to my plans. And let me say this, if you have tips or strategies about remembering people's names and using them, message me and let me know. I would love to hear. So I also asked some of my listeners for some examples of a great sales experience that they had while we're talking about this impression of increase idea. And they shared some really powerful ones that show, wow, this was an impression of increase situation. So one listener said that she was recently in the semi-high-end shoe store in London called Russell and Bromley. And she wanted some new laces for her white sneakers from there and something to clean her shoes with. And oh my goodness, more power to her. I don't trust myself with white sneakers. So she said the woman in the store could not have been more helpful. She purchased some cleaning wipes to clean the shoes, but they didn't have any laces. And so the woman in the store asked someone to go into the back where they keep their spare laces just for people trying on shoes. And they just gave her a pair. They didn't have any. They had run out of the ones they would normally sell. So they said, just take these. We want you to have them. That adds so much value. And she said it really makes her want to shop there again over and above their competitors. And such a small thing to be so powerful. She also said that she thinks Apple are really excellent at this. And just basically the gist was she recently had an issue with her laptop and they really went above and beyond with their care and support. And she said, I was literally thinking, take my money, take it, solve my problem, make me feel good. Now, I'll add in that this is how I always felt when my kids were young about the store Pottery Barn Kids. And you may or may not be familiar with that store, but we shopped there over and over and over for many, many years, whether it was for a comforter or sheets or curtains or toys or a little table to play on, a million different things. And the reason we kept coming back was that every single time we were there, even if we were just hanging out in the store and we didn't make a purchase that day, it was a good experience. They made us feel valued. The customer service was fantastic. All of that matters. Now, another listener gave me an example, and just forewarning, this one is a sad example, and at the same time, it's really powerful. She said that recently she had to put her dog to sleep. The dog was very sick. There was nothing else they could do. And so she was able to get an appointment that day at her vet. She said everything was serene. Everything was peaceful, from the front staff to the vet and the nurse practitioner that were assisting. They allowed her to spend 2 hours there talking, of course, crying, saying their goodbyes. And they walked out later with such peace and really a sense of relief. She said it was such a beautiful interaction in those last moments, and she really attributes it totally to the professional and respectful care that this vet was giving them. And if you're in the Northern Virginia area, that was Great Paws Veterinary Care. These are powerful stories. So let's look back at our list. One other item that we didn't exactly talk about is we want to give genuine compliments and we want to acknowledge people's effort. So please understand here that genuine is the key. If you are just spouting something that you don't even believe, oh my gosh, that's such a great purse you have, when in your head, you're thinking that is hideous and I would never carry that purse. People are going to feel that. If you can't think of anything to compliment, don't. Just don't. But when you can, do. And this is something I'm still working on because I find myself seeing someone while standing in line or even while on a Zoom together and I think, wow, those earrings are amazing, or what a great color, or wow, your hair looks good, or whatever. And I don't always say it. And I don't know if that's the case for you, but I don't know why we don't always say it. Say it. We all really, really want to be seen and valued. And compliments and also simply acknowledging the work or effort that people have put in, saying thank you, those matter. So whether you're selling or debating or posting or convincing or discussing, you want to make people feel valued, trusted, understood, empowered, and satisfied or excited, depending on the interaction there. So you may not work in sales directly, but these values apply to everything that we do. In fact, I'll give you one more story. I used to be a math and economics teacher in high school. I did that for 12 years. Teachers, you have my heart for sure. And I used to say, oh, I'm a math teacher. I'm not a salesperson. I don't know anything about sales. And you know what I learned? And I'm still thankful to the person who opened my eyes about this. I was walking into that classroom every day and I was absolutely selling something. I was selling math. I was selling economics. And I sold that math to kind of a hostile audience, if you think about it. Now, I don't mean hostile as in actively hostile, but I mean a lot of these students were not necessarily super excited about math. They did not necessarily see that this math was going to solve their problems. It was. I knew it was because they needed to pass the test and the class and the state test and move forward and be functioning humans and all of that. But they didn't necessarily see that, right? So how did I sell math to them every day? Well, I cared about them. And I really hoped that they were able to feel that. I tried to like and enjoy all of them. Now, in a random group of people put together with 30 in a classroom and multiple groups throughout the day, of course, we don't have the same relationship with all of them. And maybe I don't enjoy them all every day. I was always predictable. I had rules in the classroom, but they could tell that I cared. And it changed the whole nature of how my selling of math or economics went. So pause and think about your work relationships and your personal relationships. When you interact with someone, do they know that you care? And I don't mean that in a touchy-feely way, just that you value them. Have you tried to walk in their shoes? Look at their angle, their perspective. On social media, do you think about what your followers want or like or value? And I'm going to just pause and say again that I'm not saying to be quiet and acquiesce to everything just so the customer or the other person feels good and leaves happy. That is not healthy or balanced. What I am saying is that our interactions with people can be mostly a positive thing. Obviously not always, but we can at least try. And generally, instead of this resulting in us not getting what we want and meekly just letting it go, this tends to result in us getting what we want, or maybe some of what we want, more often. People want to be cared about and they want a solution to their issues. So how do you leave others with the impression of increase in each transaction and each interaction? Ask questions and actually listen to the answers. Smile as much as possible. Use people's names. Acknowledge their effort. Give genuine compliments and make sure you're really aligned with your product and service. And I hope I've done all of that for you today. I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, and leave a review. Let's get this message out further into the world. Make sure you've subscribed as well, and why not grab a screenshot and share it on your social media. Now it's time to head down to the show notes and see the resources I mentioned. Go find what you love.